Now on LWT, the South Bank Show.
Ziggy, down here, Ziggy! Hello, good evening, Ankatanga. I am Joshua Yalag, Britain's first, indeed fantastic pirate TV supremo, welcoming you to JYTV. Spot on, I love it. And now, here's our first program. Shh, wait a second. Good evening. I am presenter of Culture to the Viewers, Melvin Barlag, Cumbria, Art. Oh, I am a hired man. On next week's Midland Bank Show, I shall be talking to Lawrence Olivia Newton-John about his work at the National and his brilliant films with John Travolta. But tonight, we shall be looking at the profile of Larry Henry. And there it is. But who is Larry Henry? What is his shoe size? And is it true what they say about him and garden vegetables? Let's find out right away. Come on, Ziggy.
Tonight, the South Bank Show examines the many faces of Lenny Henry. 13 years ago, he found fame as a young teenage impressionist on a national talent show. Today, he's one of this country's most original and continually surprising comedians, whose characters both delight and illuminate life in Britain today. We follow him from his family home in the West Midlands to New York as he begins his assault on the biggest comedy market of them all, America.
My parents are from Jamaica. Anybody been to Jamaica? Anybody know about Jamaica? I went back to Jamaica recently to find my roots. Jamaica is so nice, you know, because everybody is just cool and relaxed and nice. They're so laid back, they make Perry Como look like a Hell's Angel.
In this, the year of the coronation, what could be more natural than that our friends from the Commonwealth should wish to be new Elizabethans too? Here they come from the four corners of the globe. Brown, black, yellow, and thanks to a rough crossing, some of them rather green. All of them keen to share in the dawning era of post-war prosperity. They can expect jobs here and a secure future. What some of them weren't expecting was our climate, the brr in Great Britain. And where are you from?
I've just come off the boat.
Now, from what part of the Commonwealth do you hail?
Kingston-on-Thames.
Sorry, that's Surrey, isn't it?
No, I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm here on the Thames, so, you know.
You'll go a long way in England with that sense of humor.
If it gets me as far as Dudley, I'll be happy.
Lenny's mother arrived in Dudley in the West Midlands in the early 1950s. Although his older brothers had been born in Jamaica, Lenny was the first to be born here. Like many of the immigrants to Britain, his family found life much harder than they'd imagined.
It was very hard, but it was better days than these days, I can tell you. Money was very tight, but still, things was cheap, you could live. And now you're having plenty of money and you can hardly make it, you know.
It was terrible when they first came over. People were so ignorant. You know, black people knew all about Britain and all about Britain's history, and you know, a lot of the English people at the time thought that they should have tails. Do you know what I mean? So my mum told me all about that, and I tried to put that into Deacons and into What a Country last year. Evening. My name is Deacons. I come from Jamaica. I come over to England in the early 50s. That's Hurley with a H. That's bloody Hurley. When I first come to England, everybody
everybody used to keep looking at me, staring at me, looking at me, staring at me, look. I used to get annoyed. Hey, what's the matter with you? You never seen a black man before? They said, no. You can't argue with that.
Characters like Deakus are typical of the way Lenny's used his family background for comic inspiration. His early performances as a teenager began in a local park close to his home.
This is where I met all my friends down here, my very, very best friends from the Midlands. And through them, I learnt about myself. I learnt that I was black. I learnt that we were working class, that we were quite poor. But the black thing wasn't really an issue. They made gentle jokes about it, but it was never really heavyweight. It was never malicious. And if it ever did get like that, I think I could deflect it by being funny, by doing impressions. And that's what I did a lot of the time. You know, they'd demand things like do noddy holder, so I'd have to go, all right, everybody, all day. And that used to hurt my throat a lot. We used to have a lot of good times, and sometimes there'd be a command performance. You know, we'd finish playing like 3-hour kick the can or hide and seek. I'd never be found, and or nobody would come and find me. And then they'd sit around, and I'd be here or on the mound over there, and they'd make me do impressions. So I'd be doing things like, you know, Top Cat.
Okay, man, let's move. I gotta get this show on the road, boys. Brain, what's the time? Well, the big hand is pointing straight up, and the little hand is pointing to the 5. So the time is, forget a brain, choo-choo, what's the verdict? I'm with you, TC. I'd be doing things like the Flintstones. Okay, Barney. Okay, Fred. I'd be doing things like Deputy Dog. Get out of that man, bad sheriff Muskie. I used to love the sheriff. Deputy Dog. And Vince the Mole. What happened? I'll be doing Max Bygraves. Here's a funny story. I'll be doing James Stewart, all kinds of things. And I'll be doing it for my mates. And that was where I suppose I dipped my toe into the pool of performance. This is where I actually tried things out. This is where I found out that I could actually be funny and get away with it. Because if you weren't funny, they'd take the piss out of you mercilessly. So it was a good training ground. And I've got some good friends down here too.
Despite his amateur comic talents, at the age of 15, Lenny began his working life as an apprentice engineer at a local factory.
This is work. British Federal in Dudley. I remember I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, my dad woke me up and he said, time for the real world. So I came down here and I actually realized that very quickly that this isn't what I wanted to do. It was so hard. I don't shirk from hard work as I've proven, but like, see this? I don't know what this guy's making. I don't know what he's doing. I didn't know then, I don't know now.
Away from the factory, his regular appearances at local discos attracted increasing attention, and he was invited to audition for the television talent show New Faces.
I remember when I left, the bloke said, anytime I want to come back, Lenny, you're all right. You'll always have a job here. And I was very grateful to him for saying that. I hit the street running.
This boy is only 16 years of age. Talented, house-trained, and very, very funny. Ladies and gentlemen, it's got to be Lenny Henry.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may have seen some of these impressions before,
but not in color.
Got myself a crying, talking, sleeping, a walking, a living doll. Gonna do my best to please her just 'cause she's my living doll. Got her overnight and that is why she satisfies my soul.
You won on New Faces, and 2 days later you packed in your job. I mean, a good apprenticeship job.
Yes.
Those days, those sort of jobs counted. And you blew out and said, I'm going to go into show business. Now, you must have had either terrific confidence or massive support at home, or both. What was it?
Initially, my mother was mortified. She just said, why are you leaving this job where, you know, they've offered you security, almost lifetime security? Well, except not now, because it's closing down soon. But it was a very good job. They were giving me a further education, plus this regular job. And I just said, well, I really want to do this. I think I can do this.
Well, at first, I didn't want him to do it. At first, I want him to learn something that he can call back on, if anything, you know. But When I realized that he's going all out for it, I just got to back him.
In the end, you know, several weeks later, my mum was there with me, traipsing around the clubs in the northeast, coming to see me work and supporting me when I died on my backside.
I took Betty out the other day. I took her to the pictures to see Joyce. She won't go near the goldfish now.
Did you feel that black characters were unknown to a British audience?
Definitely, definitely. I was doing impressions of white people because those were the only role models I had. You know, Mike Yarwood, Dick Emery, Frank Spencer, Benny Hill, all those kind of people. I didn't have it. There were no role models for me to impersonate, except for maybe Muhammad Ali, who I was a big fan of. He was the only one I used to do again and again. That was it.
Here's my most recent poem that I wrote while I was waiting for Joe Bugner to hit me.
One of the things that you pinched from in the early days, as everybody pinches wherever they are, really, was an LP, The Comedians.
Yes.
Which had a lot of...
Memorised every single joke.
Right. Every single joke, but it had a lot of racist jokes on.
Yeah, and I memorised those too. Because like on the album, they got big laughs, and being unaware, you don't really, it takes a long time to suss out what you're trying to do. And I didn't have a point. You know, it took me about 5 or 6 years to find out what my point of view was. So listening to the Comedians album was like, wow, here are a collection of jokes that have been tried and tested. I'm going to rip all of these off and go and do them, you know, because they all get laughs. And it was indiscriminate. It was whether they were racist, sexist, about my mother-in-law. I wasn't even married. I was telling mother-in-law jokes. I was just completely, please give me anything.
Hey, hold on. Come here. Did you know this is true? A country cousin of mine went into a doctor's surgery with all his hand bandaged up. The doctor said, hey, come here, Chuck. How did you do that? He said, I put my hand through a glass window. He said, it's lucky you had the bandage on.
I used to watch people like Charlie Williams, and I knew what they were doing, and I knew that they'd had a success by doing that, but I sort of didn't want to be like them. I was sort of being forced into doing this stuff that I didn't want to do, you know. And I ended up, in the 70s, there's terrible pictures of me wearing these flares and platforms and frilly bow ties, and because that's what the other comedians did at that time.
So you thought you were being forced to play some kind of role at the start?
A little bit, yeah. Sort of very stereotypic black comedian, you know, telling darky jokes and rolling my eyes.
We're dreaming of a white Christmas.
You got no chance.
I wanted to bring him forward slowly. I don't think people don't become overnight successes in show business. You've got to do a lot of hard work. Mainly people go into rep. Well, Lenny had no background of that sort. He won the New Faces a heat, or I think he won 2 heats, and there he was. And he had to be handled from the point of view that he was starting from scratch.
I did 5 years at the Minstrels. I did a club tour, I did Bournemouth, Yarmouth, Blackpool, and it was just all these white people coming in and then blacking up and then going out and singing these songs and then me coming on afterwards. It was just such a weird place to be. And of course I had to put up with a lot of jokes, you know, does it come off? And, you know, I bet if you cry you'll have little white lines running down your face, etc.
I put him in the Minstrels because, as you know, and I'm sure you've seen the Minstrels, we never give anybody very long. The acts are short. But when any actor goes to the Minstrels, it's following a big scene, a very spectacular scene. So it's very easy to succeed. So you've got the audience is warm toward you. And it was good for Lenny because I never put him on the first act. He was always, the show had been running for about 20 minutes before he went on. And I never allowed him to do more than 10 minutes. So it was a good, strong 10 minutes. He got on and he always went off to a good hand.
At the time, I think Robert Luft did the right thing. I was young, I was 15, 16. I was getting all these offers of management, you know, offering like $500,000 or whatever to buy out my contract. And so Robert Luft came in and took me away and said, you need to get experience. The Minstrels is good because people come to see the Minstrels. They don't really care about who's on in between. You know, it's nice and they feel very glad that there's a comedian there, but really the comedian's there to fill in the gap between the Minstrels getting changed and the Minstrels coming on and going, ta-da! So I was very protective for about 5 years, and in that respect, I'm very grateful to the minstrels because it gave me stagecraft. It taught me how to use a microphone and all that stuff. But the big thing was people blacking up, and I couldn't reconcile that.
Under the guidance of Robert Luff, Lenny began a long and strenuous apprenticeship as a young stand-up comedian. He did endless tours of the northern clubs and long summer seasons where he performed and learnt from many of Britain's traditional and established comics.
Because the summer season is like the last bastion of musical, do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, we'd do 25 weeks of summer season in Cleethorpes, and then we'd have like a 2-3 week period of entertaining the troops somewhere, and then we'd start pantomime, you know, and that would last for 15 weeks, and then of course we're back into summer season. It was that kind of gung-ho, yeah, you know, non-stop work, you know, and filling up the diary.
He did 8 summer shows, and in the summer shows, 5 of them would be the black and white minstrels, 2 were with Cannonball. And I think he learnt a lot there. I think Lenny, he'll watch other artists, and he goes out to see a lot of shows, and I think he learned stagecraft from other people as well.
With the Cannon and Ball show, it was a revelation because here was an audience that had come to see comedy. They weren't there to see all the nice costumes and the sets. They were there to see comedy. So it was a great difference for me. No disrespect to the minstrels, but it was like a new thing. It was what I needed. It was like a real boost to the confidence. And watching Cannon and Ball, and particularly Bobby, it was like a new style. It was like, wow, this is great. You know, this is actually a bit dangerous, you know. You're really going out there on a limb and you're confronting the audience and you're being really, you know, come on, laugh, enjoy yourself, have a good time. So it was great, and I really enjoyed it and got good reviews for, you know, it must have been the first time in my life. And it was fantastic.
You couldn't help but like him. I mean, when we used him on Tiswas, kids immediately warmed to him. They just thought he was wonderful, this big sort of cuddly Lenny figure. I was very rough on him. I was actually very tough on him, although, like, socially, I was a mate. When we're talking about, like, a television show, whatever, on which my career and everybody else depended, I was actually very hard on him. We very nearly dumped him off after about 6 weeks, which would have been very sad, but he really was not very together. He had all the ideas in the world, tremendous enthusiasm, which you know, he still has sort of 10 years later or whatever, but he hadn't disciplined it at all. And it was at that time, I don't think he'd heard any mutterings, but at that time he actually said, I've been working on this bloke, David Bellamy. Now, to me, at that time, the idea of this big, gangling, 6'5" black kid doing David Bellamy was just so ludicrous with his sort of stuck-on ginger beard and silly shorts and his big, long black legs. But he had the voice, and the idea was so bizarre. It was, well, Chris, let's really whammage around in the undergrowth and all this, and these great big black fingers. And I mean, that took off instantly and massively. And I think, in some ways, I mean, that kept him very much on Tiswas. And I mean, on the strength of that, he did about 300 live shows or something. I mean, he did television forever on the strength of that. But that was sort of very much a turning point for him, I think. And his confidence grew from that.
Excuse me, Quiz, have I just got time to say hello to Rodney Richard Frobisher, who is currently reclining in a West ward in a Richmond hospital? Apparently, he's whipped his vertebrae, Quiz.
Everybody starts off as an impressionist. I know lots of people who have. And I was still trying to find people who I could impersonate. It got to a point when I was on Tiswas where I thought, well, there's no one really left, you know. So I did Algernon. This is when I was with Cannon and Ball, and I did Algernon Razzmatazz, who was this very happy Rastafarian guy who ate bread and condensed milk and said "okay" a lot, and that was the very first character that I'd ever created.
1, 2, 3, come on, everybody! Woo! Come on!
Tiswas was to give way to a new late-night comedy show, OTT. It was to reflect the sudden growth of the alternative comedy scene based at London's comic strip.
They were about to do OTT, the adult version of Tiswas, and Chris Tarrant had brought the cast along to the comic strip. And I remember him waiting in the bar, and I remember thinking, God, there's a famous person, and trying to stay very cool about the whole thing.
And I said, hello, my name's Lenny Henry, I'm from OTT, and we're doing this new series, and we'd like to have have you write some material? Because I think it's important to have women writers on the show, and there aren't any. And Dawn said, well, you know, it takes us a long time to come up with our material, at least 6 months per sketch, and I just don't think it's possible, that's all. That was it. And she went off. Apparently she went in the dressing room to Jennifer and went, ah!
Some of the stuff that went on OTT was very, very good. It was live, it was late night, you know, some of it was awful. It was not that well written, it was certainly not that well presented, you know, whatever. But the one shining jewel in it was Lenny Henry. I mean, Lenny took off, I think, on that series far more than years of rolling about in custard and beans on Tiswas. And I think OTT, in amongst a lot of quite weak material around him, actually really set him up for life.
We have reason to believe you're not white, sir.
Not white? What the hell do you think with the dreadlocks tucked under the woolly hat? The picture of Cyril Regis in the back pocket of the whole West Indian cricket team eating dasheen and curry goat at my house. Of course I'm not white, you damn idiot.
Right then, sir, would we be correct in assuming that you're black?
Yes, I am black. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud.
I suppose what happened was that Lenny saw what was going on in the so-called alternative circuit, although I never really understand what that word means, but he saw Alexi, for instance. I think Alexi probably had a bigger influence on Lenny than I did. But he would just, his eyes were open to another whole form of comedy, and he liked it. He liked the fact that a lot of what people were doing had some point, if you like. And he seems to have picked up on that.
Anyway, we're going to do an Albanian folk song for you now, so here we go. I wouldn't have a daff if you paid me. Hoya, hoya, in the arm. Maya, hoya, through the ears. Maya, hoya, nail in the head. I think I'll be a cabinet minister.
You can actually still see in his work that certain areas of you know, sexist humour, racist humour, whatever. I mean, there were very standard sort of parts of club patter that he learned as a kid. Suddenly, you know, he started to question them, and they quietly went away.